Welcome, and thank you for standing by. At this time, all participants are in a listen-only mode until the question and answer session of today's conference. At that time, you may press star one on your phone to ask a question. I would like to inform all parties that today's conference is being recorded. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. I would now like to turn the conference over to your host, Ms. Stephanie Schierholz. Thank you. You may begin.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Welcome, and thanks for joining us for today's media teleconference. I'm Stephanie Schierholz with NASA's Office of Communications. We are here today to discuss the activities that unfolded at the International Space Station today following the docking of the multi-purpose laboratory module named Nauka. Here to talk with us today are Kathy Lueders, our Associate Administrator for NASA's Human Exploration and Operations Mission Directorate, Joel Montalbano, the Manager of NASA's International Space Station Program, and Steve Stich, the Manager of NASA's Commercial Crew Program. I'll offer the opportunity for each of them to start with some opening remarks, and then following that, we'll take some questions. Go ahead, Kathy.
So today was another day where we are learning how important it is to have an operational team that is prepared for every contingency. Joel will be walking through what was a pretty exciting hour, but because of the team's preparedness, the crew was ready, the contingency operations performed, and we were able to return to a stable and safe configuration. Spaceflight is hard, and when we bring on new capabilities, there can be glitches, which is why we prepare and train for these contingencies. For folks following along with station traffic, you know that this was a busy week, so we did make a call this afternoon on the OFT-2 launch timing, and Steve Stich will update you on that. We wanted to make sure we had some breathing room to fully assess the situation on station before adding another vehicle to the ISS configuration. Thank you for your interest in this, and I'll hand it over to Joel.
All right, well, thank you, Kathy. So as everyone knows, we had a good MLM docking this morning, approximately 8:30 Houston time. What we did see around, and I'll give you some exact times, at 11:34 Houston time, we started seeing the ISS attitude start to diverge from normal. So we normally fly a certain attitude and pitch, yaw, and roll, and we started seeing a deviation from that. The crew reported, and we were able to see on the ground with video jet firings from the MLM module. And so that took us out of the standard attitude that we fly in. And what happens is we have gyrodynes on board that keep the space station pointed in a certain direction. And what would happen is we exceeded that limit, and then we went in what we call a loss of attitude control. As a result of that, we handed over to a control authority over to the Russian segment, and the service module engines started firing to recover us in the attitude. So again, we went out at 11:34. We officially went to a loss of attitude control at 11:42, and then we were back in attitude control at 12:29. What we saw today was just an awesome job by the mission control flight, the flight control team. Those guys were rock stars again and got us back in attitude control. It also shows you what a robust vehicle we have and our ability to take these contingencies, recover from them, and move on. Throughout the time, we maintained communication most of the time with crew. There was a couple of dropouts, some small dropouts on the order of minutes, but we were able to work with the crew, talk to them, make sure they understand what's going on, and then actually we had to take some steps as well. We did have to reconfigure some of the solar arrays and the radiators on board in response to the firing of the jets. Again, the flight control team did that, and that all worked out well. With that, let me hand it over to Steve, and then we'll wait for questions after Steve is done. Thank you.
Thanks, Joel. Yeah, today, about the time some of these events were transpiring, we did have our Starliner mission management team, our L-1 day Starliner mission management team, and everybody was polled go to proceed toward the launch, which was planned for tomorrow. The Starliner vehicle is in great shape. The spacecraft is doing really well. The ground systems are doing well, as is the Atlas V launch vehicle. So those vehicles are ready to go and support whatever opportunity we need. Today, the Dragon vehicle on orbit, the Crew 2 Dragon, was powered up for the MLM docking, just as a contingency if it should be needed. That spacecraft was powered up, and the SpaceX team did a phenomenal job supporting that operation. As we talked a little later, earlier in the morning, about the same time we had the Starliner mission management team, we did roll the launch vehicle and spacecraft out to the launch pad. So it is at the launch pad right now. It was secured down to the launch pad area. All the connections were hooked up, and so that vehicle and systems are ready to support the launch, and that happened today. We are in the midst of this situation that happened. We're assessing what the right actions are relative to the launch vehicle being at the pad, and don't be surprised if later on we decide maybe to roll it back in due to the weather. As we looked at the situation today, we decided that it would not be smart to go launch the OFT-2 mission tomorrow. We wanted to give the ISS program time to assess what had happened today, determine the cause, and make sure that they were really ready to support the Starliner launch and the OFT-2 mission. So right now, the earliest opportunity would be Tuesday, August the 3rd, which would be a 1:20 Eastern launch. We would dock on Wednesday, August the 4th at about 3:06 p.m., and that would be the earliest opportunity, Tuesday, August the 3rd, with a one-day backup on Wednesday, August the 4th. And those opportunities, we had reserved those on the range already, so those are the opportunities we'll be shooting for. So again, we're standing by in the commercial crew program to support whatever the ISS program needs from us. It's a strong partnership between commercial crew, ISS, Boeing, United Launch Alliance, and SpaceX, and we're ready to go support the ISS program. So thank you.
Thank you all. We will get straight to questions. If you do have a question, please press *1 on your phone to get into the queue. Again, to ensure as many people as possible get the opportunity to ask their question, please ask only one question per person. And let us know to whom you are directing your question if it's not obvious, please. So with that, we'll go to the first question in the queue, which is from Andrea Leinfelder from the Houston Chronicle.
Hi, thanks for taking the call. I was wondering if you could give a little bit of clarity on when the VESDA service module and when the Progress cargo vehicle were firing thrusters. Were they both used, or was the VESDA used inadvertently and then turned off to move to Progress? I just don't really understand the order there to get it back to the proper attitude. Thank you.
Okay, good question, Andrea. So first we used the service module thrusters, or VESDA thrusters, and then for additional control authority, we switched over to the Progress. And so we have a number of configurations we have to be in, depending on what we're actually doing on space station. And so when you get in this case, first thing you do, and as you saw today, hand it over to the service module thrusters. And then as a team is doing the configurations, we were able to hand over to the Progress, and that gave us a little more control authority, and that's where we ended up, and that's what we recovered attitude.
Okay, thank you. Our next question is from Bill Harwood of CBS News.
Yeah, hi, thank you very much. And I'm not sure who this is for, so really anyone. At the evening DPC today, I think it was Oleg Novitsky mentioned, and according to the translator, he said, quote, vacuuming the lines tomorrow. I assume that's a depressurization procedure. And he implied the Russian crew would be on the USOS for that operation. Can someone explain what it is they're doing tomorrow, and is that somehow potentially dangerous? Thanks.
All right, this is Joel. So the plan is once the module is in a good configuration, what we do is we go ahead and, from a safety standpoint, you configure the prop system for long term. And what that entails is to basically separate, make sure you have a pyro-type separation that allows you to keep the fuel and the oxidizer system separate. And then they use, helium is used to purge the system, and we go ahead and vent that overboard. And so that is the plan. It's always been the plan. We're working with our Russian colleagues to make sure that there's been no changes to that plan as a result from today. As far as the configuration, you know, anytime you work with a propellant system, you always want to you plan for everything to go nominally, but you also prepare, like the team was today, for anything that doesn't. So as a response to that, what we do is we go over the crew, hey, if there's any issues with any of the things, we want to make sure everybody knows where to go, and just kind of review of emergency procedures. So that's probably what you heard. I didn't hear those comments specifically, but I expect that's what you heard today from the crew.
Thank you, Joel. Our next question is to Stephen Clark from Spaceflight Now.
Thank you, Stephen Clark from Spaceflight Now. Just one quick one first off. Have you ruled out Saturday just based on range availability? Is that still not a viable launch date? And also, in terms of the long-term pad configuration for the Atlas and Starliner, are there any constraints, like with technical constraints, like with the Starliner batteries or anything like that, that would prompt you to roll back and do any servicing to the spacecraft if it looked like you were going to be on the pad for several days? Thanks.
This is Steve Stich. I could take that question. Yeah, right now the range is not available on Saturday, and so we're not looking at that opportunity. We also want to give Joel and his team a little time to assess what happened, perhaps. So look at the thruster firing sequences, why did it happen, what the loads imparted to the vehicles were, and make sure we're in a good config before we would send Starliner on the way. Starliner and the Atlas are in a good configuration, and they can stay in the config they're in for quite a number of opportunities, and so there's really no constraints on Starliner, any of the systems, or on the Atlas. We may want to just roll back as a precaution. If you're here in Florida in the afternoon, quite a bit of weather moves through, and so if we're going to be down for a few days, we may decide to roll back to the vertical integration facility and get it out of the weather. But other than that, no constraints.
Thank you, Steve. Next question comes from David Curley of the Discovery Channel.
Thanks very much. A couple of questions, I think probably for Joel Montalbano. You said that both the crew on the station and I would assume crew in mission control noticed it. Who noticed it first? Did the crew actually see something happening outside the window? And second, you said you asked the crew to take some actions. What were those actions? Thank you.
Okay, actually what happens when you get a divergence from the attitude, or you move from the attitude, we get a message in the control center. So the control center got the message, the crew got the message at the same time. Actually, talking with the crew, they didn't really, you didn't really feel any movement, and so, but it was first seen on the ground by the automated system. As far as actions, and so I mentioned we had to configure our solar arrays and our radiators because, you know, we wanted to make sure if we lost communication with the crew, we gave them the procedures to configure the radiators, and so that was one of the commands that they did.
Thank you, Joel. Our next question is from Chelsea at space.com.
Hi, thanks so much for taking my question. Is there any chance that Nauka caused any damage to the station or vice versa during the unplanned thruster firing? And if any damage is located, and if there is any potential risk to astronaut safety present, what protocol would be followed next?
Wow, there are a lot of questions there. I'll try and get to them. We didn't see, right now we haven't noticed any damage to the ISS. One of the things we do after a dynamic event like this is go ahead and sit down with our structural loads team and review all the data, go pull all the telemetry, and take a look at it and do an assessment. And so that'll be the ongoing and the next steps. But I'll tell you, the initial thing, we didn't see anything. You asked the crew, hey, did the space station shake or anything like that? And the response was negative. We didn't see anything like that. As far as the danger of the crew, the crew's in, there was no immediate danger at any time to the crew. Obviously, when you have a loss of attitude control, that's something you want to address right away. But the crew was never in any immediate emergency or anything like that.
Thanks, Joel. Our next question is from Gina Sinceri of ABC News.
Tell me a little bit about the investigation that's taking place. Would you characterize this as a tiger team?
Yeah, so first of all, the Roscosmos will have the lead on, what happened. And so they'll take the lead on, what's going on with the MLM. And then from the ISS structures, we'll have the lead on that and work that. And the plan will be we'll share, right? As we always have done on board, for 20 plus years with our international partner colleagues, is we pull the different teams together. Tiger team, I'm not sure what you'll call it. The Russians generally call it a commission, where they put together a team to go ahead and look at it. We'll have our standard engineering team look at it as part of their normal job.
Thank you, Joel. Our next question comes from Eric Berger of Ars Technica.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for doing this. Just trying to get a sense of how serious of an issue this was for the ISS. Like, is this something you prepare for, and so it was kind of, you kind of had it in your wheelhouse, or was it like kind of, oh, crap? And then second of all, how much propellant was used to fight back against the MLM thrusters by the service module in Progress 83? Like, did they use half of their available propellant, 3/4, 10%? I mean, I don't know the exact numbers, but I'm just curious, like, how much gas is left in the tank up there for ISS for maneuvers? Thank you.
Okay. The flight control team trains regularly on different contingencies. And so they train for situations like this as well as emergencies on a regular basis. And I'll tell you, we have the best sim team in the world. As a former flight director, whenever I was in console, I was always satisfied and felt always prepared. So, we look at contingencies all the time. The team operated per the procedures. It wasn't like we had to come up with procedures or anything. The team knows what to do and how to operate, and that's what they did today. Your other question on usage, we're still working that. Again, Roscosmos has the lead on the exact amount of propellant. We didn't use anything that I would be worried about in the fact that, empty tanks or anything like that. From an ISS standpoint, it was more propellant, obviously, than we wanted, but nothing that I'm worried about.
Thank you. The next question is from Kristen Fisher with CNN.
Thanks, everyone, for doing this. My question is about the communication dropouts. Joel, you said that there were a couple minutes of communication dropouts. Exactly how long were those dropouts, and what was the level of concern while those were happening?
Okay, so in that hour period, we had 2 dropouts. One was 4 minutes and one was 7 minutes. And so the way the team works on the ground, the flight control, first thing, when we have something like this, the first thing the flight director does, he declares a spacecraft emergency. And what that means to the network is we automatically become primary on the satellite usage. So we're able to maximize the communication links of the satellite to the ISS. And so while he's doing that and the network is working, we have a communication specialist who's in the process of predicting the attitude, so she can see the attitude of the space station. They can model where the satellites are in the line of sight. And so they're able to, based on the rate that we were changing, able to predict when we were going to lose comm and when we weren't. So we had, we knew when we were going to lose comm. we had predictions when we were going to regain it, and we worked within those parameters, which, again, this is something that the training team does routinely in simulations. And so this team just picked up and just made it like a normal day for them.
Thank you, Joel. The next question is from Chris Gebhardt of NASA Spaceflight.
Yeah, thank you. I'm a little curious just on some things that this brought up. If there were a true emergency that the crew needed to evacuate the space station for, how quickly can Dragon and Soyuz actually undock, given that under normal circumstances that's usually a multi-hour process? And if you ever needed to leave the space station but you didn't have attitude control, is that sort of planned into these vehicles' ability to get away from the station structure quickly if they needed to? Thank you.
And Joel, I can take that one. Both the Dragon and Starliner are designed not only to transport crew and cargo and return crew and cargo, but they're designed to be a lifeboat. And they are designed to be powered up very quickly. The Dragon could have been powered up within several minutes. The crew could have got in it. The suits are in Dragon. They're stored in Dragon the whole time. And so the crew, should that need ever arise, and today was not that case, right, with the loss of attitude control, but should they ever need to get in Dragon and depart for whatever reason, they can get in that spacecraft and they can power it up on their own very quickly. It can obtain the required navigation information from the space station and be able to depart on its own. And it can depart under rates and even in these kind of cases where you have the loss of attitude control. So it was designed with these kind of contingencies in mind.
Thank you, Steve. Our next question is from Kenneth Chang of the New York Times.
Hi, thank you. I was wondering if you could tell us how much thrust the Nauka thrusters were putting out, how fast was ISS rotating during this, and how much torque was applied to the structure. Thank you.
Let's see. We were mostly moving in pitch from the thrusters. And we got up to a maximum rate of about 0.5 degree per second. As far as the actual thrust, that's what we're going to go back and go kind of recreate depending on which thrusters we're firing. And then I think you had one other question.
How much torque was applied to the structure?
Yeah, that's the stuff that's be part of our reconstruction that we just don't have yet.
Thank you. The next question is from Irene Klotz of Aviation Week.
Thanks. For Joel, what's been done since, over the past 4 hours to ensure that there aren't additional inadvertent thruster firings? And for Steve, what criteria will need to be met before you clear OFT-2 for launch?
Yeah, so on the ISS side, and then I'll hand it over to Steve, the Mission Control Center Moscow has done some reconfiguration in order to basically inhibit the thrusters from firing. And so that's the work they've done, and I'll hand over to Steve for the other question.
Yeah, right now, Starliner and the Atlas are ready to go. I think together, the Commercial Crew Program and working with ISS would want to ensure that the space station is in a stable configuration and ready for Starliner to arrive. One of the reasons that we deferred the launch opportunity is it just doesn't make a lot of sense to send another vehicle station's way while they had this event. And so we'll work together and figure out, what caused this. We do want to get the venting also that Joel talked about. Want to get that taken care of, and not be a part of the rendezvous and docking operation. So that's something that I know Joel and Roscosmos are working together to have happen. So, those are the main criteria. Really, is that Starliner is a test vehicle, and we're ready to go fly and dock to station, as I've talked about it. The docking and the rendezvous and prox ops are really critical parts of that flight. And we just want to make sure that the station team has the time to review what happened today and make sure that they'll be in a good configuration for our docking. So hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you both. The next question is from Tim Fernholz of Quartz.
Hello, this is Tim Fernholz from Quartz. Thanks for taking questions. First, a question for Kathy. I know, we've seen with new spacecraft coming to the ISS a lot of care and concern over proximity operations. There were reports when Nauka was launched that its propulsion system was having problems. What did you say to Roscosmos between the launch and the docking? Did you ask them to do anything to ensure that proximity operations would be safe? And then for anyone, you've been saying that this was never putting astronauts in any danger, but you've also been saying you had to return the station to a safe and stable configuration, which suggests that previously it was not safe or it was unstable. If 45 minutes of loss of attitude control is not dangerous, when does it become dangerous? How long would that have to continue before it would be a problematic scenario? Thank you.
So let me get started, and then I'll let Joel add, because every day Joel and his team operate with Roscosmos, as a partnership. And so they have been working with them over, what has been a 10-day journey between launch and to get to the ISS to carefully work through their planned operations and some unplanned pieces to be able to safely dock today to the International Space Station. Obviously, along the way, as they're working through their rendezvous points, just like we do with every other vehicle, Joel, working with his partners, assessed the vehicle's health, where it was, how it was checking out in different aspects, and worked together on whether, Roscosmos still felt like it was appropriate for the vehicle to keep making progress. We do the same thing when we're bringing our visiting vehicles up, and we'll be doing the same activity as we're bringing OFT-2 up to the ISS. So, there's obviously been numerous checkpoints along the way with our international partners and Joel and his team working with Roscosmos to make sure that, data and information that's critical for both sides to be aware and understanding, where the vehicles are and the readiness of the vehicles on both the station side and on the visiting vehicle side is critical. That kind of communication goes on. I think, Joel, you're probably talking to your counterparts numerous times every day, and we definitely, along with the associate administrator, had a couple of telecons too. So, Joel, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I'll just say, we got a pretty good relationship across the partnership, and not only do we talk to our Russian colleagues, me personally and Kathy as well on a regular basis, we have an opportunity to talk to our other partners and then make sure everybody is ready to go for all the times we do dynamic activities, and then MLM was no different. So I was talking to my Russian colleagues, both at Roscosmos as well as Mission Control Center Moscow, and the teams were working to do the same to make sure we're coordinated. Your question about when it's become dangerous for the crew, and I'll tell you, we have a number of contingency plans, and you saw today. First, Roscosmos activated, or Mission Control Center Moscow activated the service module thrusters, and then they moved to the progress thrusters for additional control authority. To me, and we have all sorts of contingency plans that we train. We train the flight control team. We train the crew on board. We train both standalone as well as integrated. And, to me, until you exhaust all your contingency plans, that's when you start to worry. And today we just weren't there. We saw pretty quickly that the station was converging. We were able to arrest the rate and start recovering. And so I'll tell you that the flight control team, while unexpected, they were seeing goodness come to us fairly quickly and were able to get us back to a stable attitude, like I said, within the hour.
And Joel, could you just elaborate a little bit more on how frequently the space station is moved, its attitude adjusted?
Sure. We're flying a special attitude for the MLM docking. It's not something, it's not uncommon. We'll do that for different vehicles coming and going. We do that for a lot of the Russian vehicles where you fly a more preferred attitude that sets you up for proximity operations, whether it be for approach or departure. So it's not uncommon that we go into other attitudes. Obviously what was uncommon today is that we moved from that attitude and basically we're not able to hold that attitude until we took thruster jet firings to recover.
Thank you. Our next question is from Emily Speck of WKMG.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. What exactly happened right before the thrusters started firing? Was the hatch opened? Is the hatch open now? Like, what is the status of the module there? Thank you.
The hatch was closed. At the time, Mission Control Center Moscow was working to do the post-docking reconfiguration. So there's a number of steps you have to do when you bring a visiting vehicle or, in this case, a new module to the space station. So at the time, they were doing the reconfiguration from there, but the hatch was closed.
Thank you. Our next question is from Joey Roulette of The Verge.
Hey, thanks. Questions for Joel. There were some reports of debris or some kind of material floating around the module shortly after it docked. Was there anything like that you guys saw? And then another question, if you said the ISS is in a stable attitude and you guys were able to get it under control, but is it in the same attitude that it was before the thrusters started firing, or is it in a totally different attitude now? Thanks.
No, we returned to the attitude we were in for the MLM docking. And so, again, that was the attitude. It wasn't just any stable attitude. It was the attitude that we were flying for the MLM docking. And we'll stay in that attitude until later tonight. We'll go back to the nominal attitude that the station flies. The crew did report seeing some debris or some I think I heard they mentioned flakes or something. We believe that was from the jet firing. So that wasn't at docking. That was once we saw all the jet firings. I have not heard of any reports of debris post-docking. It wasn't until you started seeing the jet firings. And what they probably saw was, as you had numerous jet firings, kind of a cloud there, which is not unexpected.
Thank you, Joel. Our next question is from Micah from the Wall Street Journal.
Hi, Joel, this one's for you. Could you just explain a little more detail about what happens, when a facility like ISS loses attitude control? Like, what are the sort of highest level risks there? If you could just explain that a bit more, thanks.
Okay, so a couple things, you fly in a certain attitude and then you do for example, you'll do your communication predictions. And so you'll know when you'll have a line of sight to a satellite for communication such that you can talk to the crew, you can send commands to the vehicle, you can receive telemetry. And so flying in an attitude that the team has based the flight plan on, that's pretty important. You also have thermal reasons to fly in an attitude. You also want your solar rays. You want to be in a certain attitude such that your solar rays are set up to generate power during the daylight passes, so you have the power at night. So a number of configuration with your solar rays and just to make sure that you're set up. So solar rays communication. So when you lose attitude and you're in a different attitude than your plan, all that's changing, right? And so maybe you don't have the same communication opportunities that you had when you were in the standard attitude. You risk some things getting too warm or too cold. Now we have backups. We have heaters on a lot of things to address that. And so, but you have a plan that you fly, and you'd like to maintain that. So when you do go out of attitude, all that changes, and that has to be reassessed.
Thank you. The next question is from Michael Sheets of CNBC.
Hi, all. I appreciate you taking this many questions. I wanted to key in on a prior issue that had been identified with the space station, which was those leaks in the Russian modules. I believe there was more than one, but you might be able to confirm just how many there are being monitored. Is there any concern about heightened leak levels because of the structural tests? And, you know, is there a way the crew can be checking for those? I'm not maybe sure what the process would be and in what order you guys would begin looking at that after such an incident like this one where there might be some structural impacts. Thanks.
Yeah, so so first of all, we keep that the hatch to the aft end of the service module where you're seeing the small air leaks closed the majority of the time. Now we're still seeing some, and when you have that hatch open, I want to say it's maybe just a little over a pound a day. It's not anything that we're worried about. What we'll do is, as a response to this event, we'll work with our Russian colleagues, and we'll be looking at the structural models across the space station, not only the aft end of the service module, but across the space station to make sure if we saw anything that worries us. But again, a little too early to tell, but that's on our list of things to do.
Okay, thank you. The next question is from Justin Bachman from Bloomberg News.
Hi, thanks for the time today on the questions. I wanted to get into a little bit on schedule, given the work that you said needs to be done in terms of the gas venting and the dynamic forces analysis on the station experiencing today. Are you confident that August 3rd is still a valid date, or August 4th? Or is the team looking at possibly later dates next week? And just in terms of how long that work that needs to be done will take to get done? Thanks.
Yeah, so we'll do a quick look. We'll have something probably, I'm thinking by we'll have a quick look done by the end of the day tomorrow. So I'm not too worried about that. And then that'll tell us if we have any poke outs that we're worried about that we want to go and look at. But again, with the fact that the maximum rate we saw was 0.5 degree per second, I'm not too worried, but the teams will go off and do that work. We also have we have to finish all the reconfiguration of the MLM, and so we got to work that with Roscosmos. Again, that's scheduled to be complete tomorrow, but if there's any funnies with that, that could affect our readiness. But I'll tell you, right now we're on a plan to support the commercial crew program of August 3rd launch.
Thank you. Next question is from Camden Hall from the Talk of Titusville.
Yeah, hi guys. Thanks for doing this. My question is for Steve. Would today's events delay the return of Starliner? And then for the August 3rd launch, could you give us a time with seconds? Thanks.
Steve, if you're talking, we can't hear you.
Hold on. It's 1:20 and 10 seconds Eastern time.
Thank you. And we're running out of time, so we'll make this the final question from Ken Kramer from Space Up Close.
Hey, thank you for doing this, and good luck with the investigation. I think my question is for Joel, please. Can you tell us anything about the direction of these thruster firings? And was there any possibility that the exhaust could impinge on the ISS, cause any damage? And is this also the first time that an unexpected thruster firing happened from a docked vehicle? Thanks.
So we saw the majority of the attitude excursion was in pitch. At this time, I'm not worried about plume on the ISS. Looking at the video, it looked like the majority of the jet firings were at the aft end of the MLM. We've had a couple over the 20-plus years. I would say maybe two other times where you had inadvertent jet firings. So definitely not something that happens on a regular basis, but I would say maybe three-ish times, four-ish times in our 20-plus years of existence.
Thank you, Joel, and thank you, Joel, for taking the brunt of the questions. I'll now pass it back to Kathy for some final thoughts.
Hey, I just wanted to conclude this by thanking all the teams that worked this anomaly. If you listen to the loops, you realize there was our science partners were working with us. The SpaceX Crew 2 team came on console and helped. The Boeing Starliner team jumped in and supported. Everybody jumped in, and today we operated as one. And I think the ISS config as it is today is a reflection of that amazing teamwork. So, like I said, I'm incredibly proud of what I'm viewing as my team, our team, and this just shows spaceflight is hard, but we are prepared to do it. So thank you, everybody, for supporting this telecon. Thank you, Joel. Steve and I are very grateful you got the brunt of the questions and did a great job. Thank you.
Thank you all, and thank you for taking time out of a busy day and to come talk to us and talk to the media and fill us in on what was happening, just mere hours after it happened. We really appreciate that, Kathy, Joel, and Steve. Thank you to the reporters who joined us on the line today and for your continued coverage of all the exciting things happening on Space Station with commercial crew, research, and all of the other agency activities. We know it's a very busy time in human spaceflight, a very exciting one. So that'll wrap things up for us this evening, about 1 hour after we conclude. If you want to listen to a replay of this teleconference and all of Joel's eloquent answers, you can dial 800-510-0118. Again, that number is 800-510-0118, and it's also available on the NASA YouTube channel as a replay. We will have lots more to share about upcoming activities, including the International Space Station and Commercial Crew Orbital Flight Test 2 mission. So keep following along with us on the web, on social media, and NASA television. You can always learn more about the missions at nasa.gov/station and nasa.gov/commercial-crew. Have a great evening.
Thank you. That concludes today's conference. You may disconnect at this time. Host, please stand by for your line count and post-conference.